Treasurer Jim Chalmers is overhauling the investment mandate of the $230 billion future fund established by the Howard government to drive capital into Labor's policies, including renewable energy. Joining me is Deputy Opposition Leader Sussan Ley. Sussan, great to have you on again this morning. Good to see you. Is this a good idea?
Morning, Kenny. Well, I don't think Australians want to take investment advice from Jim Chalmers or Anthony Albanese. The problem with Jim Chalmers is he's economically illiterate and Australians are copying the bill. And this latest idea is further evidence of that. I mean, the Future Fund is performing well. Why would you change the mandate? Why would you fiddle with something that's actually making a good return? So to raid the Future Fund for Labor's pet projects is simply not on. My message to this government is focus on the economy, get your hands off the Future Fund.
So its role is to make a return of about 4 to 5% a year and to pay the pensions of retired public sector workers. Its investment choices, as far as I know up until now, don't have a political focus. In your opinion, will it still be able to manage a yearly return of 4 to 5% under this change?
If it's left alone, it will, Kenny, and that's the whole point here. By directing it to invest in certain areas, by changing the mandate, which is a serious thing, what this Treasurer and this government is trying to do is perform some sort of act that makes it look like they're being competent about the economy when in fact they're being completely incompetent. Let the Future Fund get on with its job. I mean, you know, would you trust these guys? They promised you that your mortgage would go down. They promised you that your cost of living would go down. Your mortgage has gone up by $35,000 a year. Your power bills have gone up by $1,000. You simply do not want them anywhere near the Future Fund. It is inappropriate for them to change the mandate. And this is what we see from Jim Chalmers. You know, he always seems to say the right thing. You know, he likes to stand up and say a lot of things. But the problem is what he does. And this is really good evidence that doing the wrong thing is going to send the Australian economy backwards.
The social media ban legislation will be introduced to Parliament today, and we know a bit more about it. Tech giants will face a fine of up to $50 million for breaches, and it'll be up to platforms themselves to take reasonable steps to prevent those younger than 16 from accessing the platforms. So every platform may have different methods of verifying age. Is that correct? It won't be a standardised approach?
Every platform needs to take responsibility, Kenny. Peter Dutton led this debate from the start and was very strong, as we've all been strong on this. And look, I understand members of Parliament across the aisles are concerned, but we want to see this happen efficiently. We want to see it happen well. We want to have the interests of young Australians front and centre, not the interests of the tech companies. I'm looking forward to looking at that legislation when it comes into the Parliament today. We'll go through it carefully to see if it meets the tests that we have set for it. Because you know, I know, when you speak to parents across the country, it's often the number one thing they say when they come up to you at a footy game or at a barbecue or at a community event. They are so worried about it. And the other interesting thing, Kenny, is when I had a forum with 16-year-olds in one of my public schools, and I thought I might get a bit of pushback, I actually got none. The young people themselves want this to happen too.
Yeah, so the Coalition is committed to backing the bill?
We always look at legislation when it's tabled. We don't trust anything this Labor government does, but we will go through it carefully. And look, there have been good discussions across the aisle, and there have been good discussions between all of the people involved in bringing this to the Parliament. But I have to say, when I heard the Minister talking about it yesterday, and I don't step back from her good intentions, just didn't have the sense of urgency that I would have liked to see. We need this in, we need this working, but of course it has to work properly, I understand that. And the tech companies have to step up and do what I can't believe they don't know they need to do. I mean, they are the platforms where these dreadful things happen, and it needs to stop.
Snapchat will be included in the ban now after some pushback, and we have been picking and choosing platforms, what's in and what's out. What happens if a new social media app emerges, which it will straight away? Does it automatically fall under legislation, or will it be a manual inclusion by the E-Safety Commissioner? What happens there, do you know?
These are details that should be worked through. There was a suggestion, for example, that Snapchat was outside the scope of the bill. That was that wouldn't have worked. I mean, Snapchat is a platform where significant bullying takes place and it's not on. So we would have to have some way of examining the future as well as what's on the table now, because tech moves quickly, as you know. And it's a really good point to raise, because these are the sorts of details in the bill that we need to see and that we need to understand, and that we need to make sure that we get right, that the Parliament gets this right.
Yeah, there seems to be lots of loopholes at the moment. Sussan Ley, appreciate your time this morning as always. Thanks so much.